Hello, everybody. It's 1 minute past 12 on Friday. Sorry, that's my fault. I was ironing the mise-en-scène in the background so that people don't complain about me creases. Welcome to Wow Ergonomics with myself, Graham Coe, Stephen Hout, Mr. back at Elkhuizen, UK Ireland.
Look, Graham, when I came into the studio, Graham, there was this blank field, and I thought that field needs filling. I filled it, and so's our guest. So the question is, why aren't you doing it?
Well, because I'm a man of many things, and I couldn't possibly fit them into 30 characters. And we also have Chris Hall. Now, how do you pronounce your surname?
Hall-Franzkowiak.
Franzkowiak. Actually, it's easier than it looks.
It is, yeah. That's pretty much what everyone says as well, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Do they? Do you know what? I haven't even looked lately. Do they still have that thing on LinkedIn where you can get it to say your name?
They do, and someone once said to me that maybe I should do it, but I quite enjoy not doing it.
I think so.
To allow people to struggle.
Yeah.
We have the same problem with our company name. When you go and see people, I sort of put them out their misery and just sort of reduce it to Backer, which is nice and easy. But I have Einkhausen, Eindhoven, and it's just like, to the point. Hence why I try and make it easier for people and say, let's just call it Backer. It's nice and easy. We don't have to have this problem. We're dancing around for
I'm going to surprise you now, right? Because people get my surname wrong all the time.
Right.
And it's awful. You go places and they say, you're on the telephone and you say cough and they go, cough. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, it's cough. Cough. How do you spell that? And I've taken to going, first of all, it's coat with an H on the end. But then I've realised that the majority of people in Great Britain can't actually spell the word coat. Weirdly. So, you then end up spelling out COATH, and then they go, cough.
What about oath with a C at the start? But I guess they then can't spell oath, can they? So it just shifts the problem somewhere else.
I know. There you go. Is there anybody else, if you're watching, does anybody else have a problem with their name? Do let us know. Yes, it is great. Thank you. Good share. Well, thank you. We hope so.
Yeah, I've had stuff like brown Kodiak before and things like that. So I enjoy it though. I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
We could
do
talk
you correct them, Chris, or do you just, out of politeness, however they attempt it, just go, yeah, that's it, and just agree with it? Where do you fall on that one?
Yeah, a lot of people don't even get that far. So when I got married, we added the Hall, which is my wife's surname, to the front. So whether you're at the doctors or something like that, and they'll start calling you out, they'll say Hall, and then they'll pause, and you can just sort of, sometimes I'll leave it a few seconds just to see what happens, but often it's just, that's me.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? Maybe we should just reduce people's names down to like their initials. CC, CH, 11, I don't know. Give us all the number, just like the government do.
You see, my nickname at school, or generally amongst my friends, is Howie, which actually my name gets extended. So my nickname is longer than my actual name because a Y gets put at the end. So again, sort of trying to reduce it down, mine actually goes the other way and becomes a longer spelling.
Well, do you know what? It's interesting you should say this, because I interviewed earlier this week, did one of these things for with a guy that was 27 years his career in Formula One racing. He was head of pit, right? Absolutely phenomenal career. He's trained people like Coulthard, Schumacher, Alonso. Wow, what a career! And he said he's got a nickname, and he said in motor racing everyone's got a nickname.
Okay.
He said, and that's the way forward. He said, because you can't have 3 people in a pit called David.
Yeah.
You imagine it's like, David. You've lost the race.
Yeah.
by the time you've worked out which one it is, so everybody has to have a nickname.
Right,
So maybe
okay.
that's where we should just all go with life. Everybody have a nickname, pick a nickname, stay in that stream, then it just make life so much easier. Just call everybody a nickname.
Yeah.
So we're going to start calling you Howie from now on. Then
That's fine, no problem. I'm used to that. Water off a duck's back. What about you, Graham? Coty? Coffee?
No. Well, people call me G, and I don't know where it comes from because I've never called me that.
Right.
I've never called myself that. But you meet people, and then they feel that they can start calling you G. It's like, oh, G. It's like, I've got a name, but you just run with it, I suppose. Have you got a nickname, Chris?
I've had different ones over the years. So Frankie was one for a long time. Franz, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Franz Ferdinand.
Yeah.
Nice one.
He doesn't need much to crowbar a music reference in, do you, Graham?
No, absolutely not. No, well, got a lot of that coming up later today. Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
So I do quite a few things. I'm a podcast production agency owner. I sort of created that. I started freelancing in 2017 on podcasts and then created a business in 2020. So I've been doing that for sort of just over, nearly 3 years now. And I also teach as well, sound engineering, 3 days a week. So kind of have a bit of a mixed working career at the moment. So yeah.
You've got to ask anybody that started a career then, because
I was thinking, well. Ask the question.
Did you pivot or were you pushed? No, I mean
into the business. Do you mean in the podcasting stuff? So it was quite a few different things I guess happened to sort of make it come into being. So I teach sound engineering, so my kind of background is in audio production anyway, and I'd commute to my teaching job, which is based in Croydon, and I live down on the south coast. So I had like an hour each way. It's a couple of hours a day where I was just listening to podcasts and stuff, and I was just sort of thinking like I can do this, and I'm just sat here on the train. So wanted to see if I could earn a bit of extra cash at that point, particularly as we were just starting our kind of family, just having our first daughter. Obviously financially difficult times when you're having kids and all that kind of stuff. So any extra cash was going to be welcome. So I mean it wasn't much at the beginning. So I got very lucky in a lady 20 minutes down the road from me was happening to look for a podcast producer, and I kind of blagged my way into that job, and then from
I
there
love a bit of blagging. I've been doing it for years.
And then just sort of built it up from that, really. Just so started doing it all on the train and grew a company out of that.
I love that, doing it on the train. Did you add in any of those train sound effects into any of the podcast? Mind the gap.
It does get a bit frustrating when the announcer is particularly loud and you have to kind of just stop what you're doing because you can't hear.
What was it they said? What?
That sounded a little bit, Graham, like you'd slipped into the Vic Reeves pub singer there when you were doing that bit. Remember that from
of course I remember Vic Reeves.
Stars,
yeah, fantastic. I'll sing it in the form of the pub singer.
Yeah.
Oh, bring back that.
Yeah, what a show.
It was. Do you remember? Are you old enough to remember that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I particularly remember
Shooting
that
Stars
sketch, but I do lots of Vic Reeves stuff. Yeah.
Wasn't that Ulrika Johnson?
Matt Lucas's career, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Shooting Stars.
Yeah.
As well. There you go. So that's fantastic. And what sort of, just so if people are watching, what sort of clients are you looking for? Are there any particular topics that you really like to gravitate towards?
I mean, over the years, it's been all sorts of different topics, from kind of entrepreneurial podcasts, so about people's companies and businesses, to coaches, to sports, kind of diet, so like vegan podcasts, to wellness, etc. All sorts of different stuff, really. So I guess the thing is that it's kind of like the same principles across these different mediums, really. So it's just kind of working with businesses, coaches, authors sometimes as well. So it's quite a mixed bag.
And it's about trying to make it as interesting for the listener as possible.
Exactly, yeah.
What, without naming names, what's been the sort of like most dire topic that has ever kind of gone, we really need to do a podcast on this, and you've been thinking, wow, my goodness.
Yeah, I remember doing one that was about sprinkler systems. So that was quite dry. But again, kind of, if you're showing your expertise in that niche and no one else is kind of doing it, then potentially it's a way that you're going to get that exposure. But yeah, that was quite a listen.
During the summer months, we find that in particular it's difficult getting the birds off the lawn before you. Oh dear.
Chris, what's what are the sort of? I mean, I guess it's not as formulaic as this, but what are the sort of 2 or 3 really sort of key ingredients to making a good podcast? And I guess on the flip side, the people who don't make a good podcast are probably not doing those. So what would be sort of the 2 or 3 really things that you think we've got to get that and that?
Yeah. So I guess one of the things Graham kind of alluded to is that it's about the listener. It's not sort of just about the host. So trying to get the audience and the listeners involved as quickly as possible. So there's lots of different ways you can do that. But whether that's from them sort of reaching out to your audience, sort of saying what sort of stuff do you want to hear, getting them to have questions that they're asking featured in episodes, all this kind of stuff. So just getting the audience invested in it and involved in it as quickly as possible is a big one. And I guess the marketing side of things, so quite a few shows that I see or have worked on in the past kind of create this great podcast but don't particularly do any marketing of it. So they won't post about it, they won't put any clips out or anything like that, so it doesn't sort of get the people coming over to it that it deserves, kind of thing. So they're two key things that I would say are really important. In terms of kind of like production quality, so the kind of way it works is just over the last 3 or 4 years changed completely. So I guess partly because of the pandemic and things like that, people were able to do podcasting much more remotely, and it's become normalized that it's kind of recorded in ways like this. So people are much more forgiving about things like audio quality, etc. So that's it is important to get that right and as good as possible, but it doesn't have to be kind of pristine recording studio stuff anymore, I don't think. Yeah.
No. And what about things like music and stuff like that in it? I mean, I tend to write my own.
Yeah. Nice.
To get over the issue of copyright. And stuff like that. What about you? What you use a lot of library stuff, or?
So it's mainly, I guess, library stuff, because it is that's part of the show that allows the host to convey their personality more. But so it might be from platforms that they can they'll have to sort of purchase a particular track, but I do kind of encourage them to choose something that they really like, that is part of kind of the sort of music that they want to use. Some people have used bespoke music that they've had composed for it. So whether that's through, there was like an arts podcast I did a few years ago, and they had almost like, I was trying to think, it was like a skiffle band or something like that. That was really cool.
That's cool.
So it was sort of stuff that was recorded specifically for it. So it's quite nice when that kind of stuff does happen, because you're not, when you're using the library stuff, obviously sometimes I've heard, like, edited a few sort of shows over the years and think, oh yeah, I've used that one before or heard that one before, kind of thing. So it can get a little bit like that with the library stuff. So I do encourage people to try and diversify where they can.
Yeah, there you go. Always wondered about copyright. Many Beatles podcasts use the music. Surely they aren't paying for it. No. Do you know what? There's a lot of copyright infringement that happens all over the place.
I mean, how much is it policed? Something like that, in terms of whether it's what you just mentioned there, Graham.
Depends where you put it. It really depends where you put it.
Right.
I mean, YouTube have changed their structure now as well, haven't they? Recently, so actually, YouTube are asking you to upload as a podcast now, and YouTube's becoming searchable as a podcast platform. YouTube are really quick on it. If you used a piece of music on YouTube that was licensed, it will tell you pretty quick.
Okay. And what are they giving the option? What's the option? Take it down or pay for the use, or how does it work?
Well, it will tell you for a start you can't monetize it. It will give you a warning to tell you that you've got a copyright infringement there, and yes, potentially you may have to remove that piece of content, or at least re-edit that piece of content to make sure that content is viable. I've just got very quickly before we continue this conversation, we've got to go back to this comment because it's brilliant. We can't miss this. My name is Virginia, and the easiest way to tell people it's Virgin with an IA at the end. I did receive a certificate to Vagina Williams. Yeah, that's brilliant. I've never had that problem.
No. I mean, I'm sure there will be someone out there, but that's going to be pretty hard to trump in the rest of the show, isn't it? So.
Heard it's tolerated for promotional purposes, e.g. if you're reviewing, saying it's really hard. I do a music podcast. I'd never play music on it because it depends where that copyright is held. Because the thing is, even if you have a musician on and you played a piece of that musician's music, they may not hold the rights to the mechanical recording of that music. So even if they've written it and they've got the copyright for the royalty rights for the songwriting, they may not hold what's called the MCPS on that piece of music. And then if you then actually broadcast that piece of music, theoretically you're acting like a radio station. You should be paying PRS, etc., for each broadcast of that piece of music. Yeah. So
now there's something I've always wondered with the radio. How much do they pay an artist to play a certain song?
It depends on the radio station, and it depends on
because it depends on the size of the radio station, their reach, etc. It's all calculated
and the time of day as well, all this kind of stuff. So it's quite a complex thing.
It's an algorithm, effectively.
You see something like Miley Cyrus with Flowers, which is going out for 8-10 weeks, and you hear it. You can flick from Radio 1 to Capital to Heart, or whatever you're doing. It's on. Yeah. I mean, she's just coining it in. I mean, just off one song, keeping it there for a long time is going to generate some serious money for her, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And every time it's played in a restaurant or bar or something like that, it will all go back to this organisation PRS, and they're the ones that sort of pay it out.
Yeah. Wow. So as a percentage, she won't get a huge percentage of that money.
Okay.
You'd be surprised. Or, well, having said that, depends on her business model, because she may own her record label, etc., and so she may be taking a higher cut. But certainly, if you look at the distribution model for a lot of artists, by the time they get their cut, it's very, very, very slim. You've only got to go over to Twitter and you'll see some artists that are putting up sort of like, I've earned 9p today, thanks. But, for the fact I've got 2,000 streams on Spotify, I've earned 9p.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not. It's and that is why a lot of artists will promote streaming services like Bandcamp and things like that, where it's a higher percentage of the money is paid towards the artist, and where people can actually download the music as well, and then pay a set amount of money for downloading and having that piece of music.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Chris, just something that was just come across my mind as we were talking there. Any subjects that you've been offered the opportunity to do a podcast on and said no? Anything you've thought a little bit too close to the bone, as it were?
Yeah, there were. So there was one where this guy wanted to take down the Canadian government, and yeah.
What?
So yeah, I was on a it was on a kind of a conversation about his project and what he wanted to do, and then he started telling me about the fact that he basically wanted to use this to take down the Canadian government, and kind of went into kind of a lot of stuff that I guess kind of when you think about sort of your brand values and all this kind of stuff, I was like, this isn't particularly something I want to be involved in. But that one comes to mind. Another sort of anything else?
Chris is marked as a terrorist.
I don't think there's been like many, to be honest with you, because generally it's been kind of ones that are really good topics, and some kind of really exciting ones as well. So yeah, I don't think that's happened much, thankfully, but that one that one does stick out.
And and in a way, we joked earlier about maybe some are a little dull in the first place, but in a way those are okay, because those are a challenge as well. They're a creative challenge to say, how can we make this more entertaining, because someone's got to talk about those things. So there is an audience for those things,
absolutely.
But even then, that audience needs entertaining. It's a little bit why we started this, because it became very clear that there were loads of people talking about ergonomics, but there were loads of people talking about but there were loads of people talking about ergonomics in such a way that it was kind of just preachy, and always saying the same thing, and there were one of the things I was looking at was who was responding to that, and you could see that if someone posted something, it would be all the people from the trade going, yay, that's brilliant. So it was like, there's a very big problem in a lot of industries, I think, where there's an echo chamber. And it's an echo chamber made up of the industry, and everybody within the industry will applaud everybody else in the industry and say, that's brilliant. Joe Public out there don't know anything about it. All the people you actually want to sell to, they don't know. I mean, that's the thing. So you could sort of go two routes with it. One is that you do go down like keeping your podcast specifically about the topic of the industry that you're in. That's kind of one option. But the other is that your podcast does not necessarily have to be just about kind of the business and things like that. It's just something that does show these kind of values you've got, this kind of storytelling side of it that you want to go into. So for example, there's one coach I work with who her podcast is not about her coaching in any way. It's just about sort of three things that she really finds interesting in talking to people, which is like wisdom they've learned over the years, pieces of music that are kind of meaningful to them, and acts of kindness that this person has experienced. And through that, it's just kind of a nice conversation that she can have with people that kind of really brings up things that have been meaningful to them in their lives. So sometimes that kind of thing can be much more widespread to a wider audience than just niching down into just a specific business topic. Yeah, Peter's saying, so true, reaching outside your professional network is more important. You see that Peter does a lot of Lego on LinkedIn. If you've never seen Peter's posts, everybody, he makes little Lego figures, which are absolutely fantastic. it's another way of reaching out there, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you know, who doesn't love Lego? So what we tend to do on this program is we tend to lull people into a full sense of security. So we initially start talking about what it is that they do, and you know, allow them to do that. And then what we do is cleverly somehow segue ergonomics into it. So
pretty much like that. You just throw it in there, Graham, don't you? We just do a 180 on it.
I do, absolutely. So you know, with respect to what you do, Chris, I mean, do you not find that actually ergonomics plays a massive part? Because you know, one of the things you want to do is you want to get people to project properly. You want them to, you know, use their best voice, etc. And if they're all hunched over like that when they're using the microphone, it's quite important to get that set up right, isn't it, in terms of comfort and, you know, good posture, etc., in order to project yourself properly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that sometimes you have to work on quite a bit, because this isn't necessarily a natural thing for people to do. And they might not necessarily have the right setup to be able to kind of get the frame right of the video, etc., the right kind of space to be able to sort of raise up the camera, etc. All these little things that add into just being able to make them comfortable in what they're doing.
Tell me about it. Especially if it's not just audio podcast, but there's visual involved as well. I mean, how many times have we seen this?
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. But that's kind of like something where you've got to be honest with the person and say,
I can see up your nose.
Well, because you want to get the best thing for them, you want to create the best product for them, and there are kind of sort of certain standards that you want to hit with it, and part of that is simply just the way they are sitting, the way they're kind of framing themselves, etc. So it might seem kind of basic, but it can be something that is a bit of a back and forth to get it right.
You can see Stephen in the background. He's got his whole background blurred there. Can you guess what he's got in the background? It's almost like a game. There's a bit of gamification in the middle of the.
Should we? Hang on.
Here we go. He's going to reveal all.
I've checked over my shoulder.
Hey,
so you
are those prime balls? No, Stephen, you categorically told me when we had that episode, I don't know when it was, that you were only buying one of those.
I know. Well, I just got
you gave in, crazy. Didn't
you? Yeah, they're my son's sort of shelf of honor as to all the different types of prime that he has. Which I'm trying to get, is it that? No, it's that way. Which is that sort of up there. And then
200 quid's worth.
I dread to think. Probably was, but apparently the price has just come right down. He said, it's down to £2.50 a bottle now. I've been recently informed. So I sometimes find, because where the TV is, it's sort of, my head just sort of merges into the TV, and that's why I tend to blur out the background. But maybe I should just go with it and just think like we said before about Chris said before about the quality doesn't have to be perfect. The backgrounds don't have to be perfect on these things anymore, do they? So
well, we've got a guy sat in a van just outside our house getting ready to take this big wardrobe. I can't even point. It's so weird doing it that way. Take the big wardrobe behind me. So we started dismantling it, but we've got to take the rest down after I've finished this, so he can take it away in a van. So you can't see it, but it's kind of chaos with all the stuff that was in there around me on the floor. So
I mean, I think we are quite forgiving now. I think we are, all of us have become quite forgiving in terms of what people wear, in terms of, what's in the background, etc. I think it's nice for us to try and move up levels and gain things. As I was saying before we came on, eventually I'm going to move downstairs and I'm going to have just a space to do this full time, because as part of it is, it would be good to just be able to go in, switch on, and inhabit a space where it's all set out, and I've got the kind of background in the background that I want, and I can get the acoustics that I want within that space. But you can do it anywhere. You can start off anywhere, but there are some going back to kind of like how you hold yourself and what you do. I mean, there are some things that are quite important, aren't there, in terms of actually just getting it right in the first place. One of the nightmares for me is when people say the only way they've got to come into a podcast is via their mobile phone. Do you find that is a mare?
Yeah. I've not had that too much recently, but I've had that quite a lot in the past. And again, it's something particularly with guests, you can't control that much. So you can send over kind of information before and say, make sure you haven't got notifications on, etc., all this kind of stuff. Try and use, if you've got one, use a microphone, or at least use your kind of Apple headset with a microphone, all this kind of all these little things. But at the end of the day, they've got what they've got, and you might have to just go with it, sort of thing. And then I guess that's where I come in to try and make it sound as good as possible.
Yeah, and even if you send notes, they don't necessarily get through sometimes. I remember doing one podcast and it was with someone in a council office, and you say try and get a space away from the main office if possible, etc. There they were in the main office, and all the way through there was like from someone next to them, John, cup of tea,
2 sugars.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, Graham. Yeah, when we've done this show, Graham, I'm thinking of 1 or 2 in particular. There was one, and I know
who you're going to say.
Maybe they divulged some commercially sensitive information that they shouldn't have done, and it was just like, oh God.
I think, and I don't know whether you've ever had this, Chris. I mean, it might just be us, but I genuinely think that they thought they were just like on a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
And they were acting almost as if they were just on a Zoom meeting, and it was really just for the ears of whoever, even though they were told this was live and that this was going out and it was being broadcast, etc. And it was like, well, about it's like, okay.
We were trying to catch each other's eye, and
Stephen
it was just
like, can you edit that? Yeah, I was like, yeah, as soon as this goes out, I'm going to pull it, edit it, and put it back up again. It's like,
I think the one that sticks out for me is there was a guy who was obviously recording an episode wearing a lapel mic, so a little one attached to here, and he needed the loo halfway through, but forgot to turn his mic off. So there was just a recording of him going for a wee and then coming back. I wasn't sure if he did it intentionally because he knew it would sort of just come to me to have to edit out, or if it was genuinely something that just happened. But
that's like a scene from one of those American comedy movies, isn't it? Where someone's in the boardroom and then they step out of the boardroom and they go to the toilet and they've still got their mic on or something, and you hear them from the toilet going, "Oh, that boss is an absolute." They step back in the boardroom and then they're fired. Oh dear, that's absolutely classic. So, have you made from the beginning to now? Have you made quite a lot of adjustments yourself in terms of your setup to help your voice and everything else?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I guess it's things like having the right type of mic, and the sort of the right interface to be able to plug that into. Because USB mics are now getting much better, so they're kind of really good because there's less equipment involved, so it's a lot easier for people to use, and the quality of them has come on a long way. So people go for things like the Blue Yeti. I don't know if either of you got a Yeti in front of you or not, but I would not recommend going for a Yeti. Okay. So it seems to be
this is a top of the range toner mic.
Nice. Yeah. But yeah, so it just gets a lot of like the room ambience, and it's something can be quite difficult to work with sometimes. So
it can be quite a warm sound, but it can be
Yeah,
it can be too much in there. It's a bit too omnidirectional, isn't it?
Because it's a condenser microphone, which is much more sensitive. It picks
Yeah.
up a lot of kind of the sort of sounds around as well. So I would always recommend going for something called a dynamic type of microphone, because it's a lot better for kind of just dialogue. It doesn't pick up that kind of sound from the room. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of invested in all of that kind of stuff to help with my own recordings for sure.
Yeah. What have you invested in, Stephen?
Invested in or blagged.
Blagged.
Headsets, cameras, all sorts of stuff. There's always someone who sort of sits on the edge of the ergonomic trade who specializes in things like that. And it's a bit like, you asked me for that nice, right? Any chance I could have one of those cameras in exchange? And then a sort of a barter process takes place with Royal Mail. And therefore usually get something that's, whether it's a headset or a camera or whatever it would be. So these things tend to come my way, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, especially you've mentioned microphones, but especially with like web cameras as well. A lot of the web cameras that are actually built into devices aren't that great.
No.
Even here. So I'm using a Logitech camera rather than the camera that comes with the Mac, because the camera that comes with the Mac, if you go to 1080, it just doesn't do the job at all. There's no adjustability to it. You can't really adjust to it. I've also got an external Canon camera as well, which the thing is with software like this, you can plug in multiple cameras as well. So if you want to, you can have several camera angles, and if you want to, you can use sort of interface software in between as well, so you can actually slide between different camera angles. It's not particularly necessary for a lot of the stuff that I do, but if you're demonstrating something, for example, you want to get that change of camera angle quite regularly, because it's no different in a way from if you think about producing something for Instagram, etc., a little video for Instagram. If you just talk to camera for 20 seconds, it gets pretty dull on the eye, even if what you're saying is really interesting. And if none of you have tried this out there, just go and try it. Next time you make an Instagram reel, just try cutting it up into different angles. So saying each of the, break it into 4-5 bits and say each bit from a different camera angle, and just see how much quicker the whole thing seems when you watch it back. Because we read all of that information, even the auditory information, visually, and if we're reading it sort of like, see, that's boring already, and that's the amount of time that you before the edit should be, just to keep us on track. And what little things do you do to try and keep people glued into the content?
Yeah, I mean, so I guess with like the social media clips that you create from episodes, even if you are releasing the episode only as audio, you're not putting it on YouTube, I would still always recommend filming it like this as well, to be able to have that video content, to create social media clips that are more interesting. You see people doing stuff that's quite popular these days of when people are talking, even if they've got the same camera angle, you sort of suddenly see that sort of moving in and out. So it's not the person doing that, but so sort of the cuts of sort of getting closer, zooming in and zooming out. Well,
it steps up the interest, doesn't it? It's like, I'm going to tell you that now. It's really, it's kind of, it's like, it's kind of building.
He's done this before.
It's building that anticipation, isn't it? It's naturally you lean into someone if you're getting excited by what they're saying.
Yeah.
So you naturally bring yourself closer to somebody as the conversation is getting more intense. So it's just creating that artificially, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's stuff like there's some shows I've worked on where they're filmed live. And they'll have kind of a couple of different angles, so you can kind of split say you're releasing a vertical social media video, you could have like the wide shot of both of them at the top, and then like the close up underneath of the person speaking. So you're cutting between the two people speaking on the bottom, but you've always got that sort of wide angle at the top. So you can kind of split the screen up with doing little things like that as well.
Oh, nice.
I always like doing the clips for clients where you finish on a anticipatory moment, you know. That's brilliant. The thing is, when you're recording people talking, you're always looking for that moment in your head. You're kind of, I don't know about you, but I take notes and like write little things down. And like that's a soundbite right there. And this is where, you know, I'm gonna. And sometimes you get to the point, Chris, as well, where you can even go, actually, I've heard that part of the conversation there and that part there, and even though that didn't follow from that, I'm going to edit it in such a way that then leads to that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So and you can start to, when you're listening to an episode, you can start to feel it's about to happen as well.
Yes.
So you can start to feel that moment is about to happen. So that's the bit I'm going to use as a clip kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's classic. I mean, if people want really good examples of that, just go and watch the clips on LinkedIn as well for Stephen Bartlett's podcast, for example. Absolutely perfect examples of, you know, and I tell you, Stephen, the way that we're going to change this world is if we, and that's it. And everyone's like, what? How are we going to change the world? I've got to watch it now. You know, and because we've been programmed. If you think about it, I did a live last week with a group of guys from radio. We've actually been programmed in this for years with radio and TV. It's just now we're starting to do it on social media as well, right? But that's always been there. If you think about when you watch a TV program at night, there's always that bit at the beginning, isn't there, where they recap and they sort of, you know, or when they're trailing that TV program, they show you all the best bits virtually. You know, it's like, and actually quite often they take it out of context as well, right? So they will use that, and it's like, you know, Johnny hates her, boom, you know, and it's like, and then you find out he doesn't really hate her, but you're going to watch it to fight. You're like, I thought Johnny was a nice guy, and he hates her, you know, and then you watch it, and it's like they've skewed it, but it's something to get you back into that long form content. Because ultimately that's where the value lies, is in watching the long form content. And especially if you're selling, you know, that's where you show your expertise. That's where you show what it is that you know about. But you've got to get people there in the first place. And people don't, you know, they don't generally rock up to long form content. They don't go, I wonder what I'm going to do today. I'm going to listen to an hour of people talking about ergonomics
systems
or sprinkler systems, you know. But if you can, you know, if you can get them there somehow, once they're there, and if you take them on the journey whilst they're there, then people will absorb it. People will go into it.
And that's the thing. People have to remember that before they go, or know that before they go into podcasting, that it is something that can be a long game, because you won't get those instant successes in like huge listener numbers. You have to kind of build that up. Unless you have a big following already, it's not just going to happen overnight. And those short form bits of content are going to be the thing that help you grow that audience.
Absolutely right. Well, Chris, it's been a pleasure having you on today.
See,
we managed to segue a little bit of ergonomics into it as well.
Yeah, we got a little bit in, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Always do. Chris, is there anything, got to ask, because we give back on the show as much as possible, is there anything you're missing from your equipment situation there that we could perhaps help you with?
Or send us a picture of what your setup looks like from the other side, from the big wardrobe side. Send us a little picture of what your setup is. And there might be, because we did it with remember we had voiceover guy about a year or so ago, Graham, didn't we? Paul DeRoss came on, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
On the show, and it was interesting. There was a piece of equipment that we do, which is like a document slope, that actually really helped him in terms of notes. So I tell you what, Chris, don't answer Graham's question. Send me a picture on LinkedIn of what your setup from the ugly wardrobe side, and then we'll see
Sure.
what we can find for you.
Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
actually, no,
Yeah.
that's very true. It might be that particular piece of equipment could be very helpful, because if you're working from notes, etc., this is a bit of equipment that slides down over the keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can literally have your notepad there. You can be writing, and then you can slide it back and type.
Cool. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we'll,
no, I'll
we'll have
do
a
that.
look.
I'll take.
We'll have a look
take
at your
picture.
picture.
I'll just
Yeah,
tidy
we'll
up a
send-
little bit first, though. I think
Yeah.
before.
Move the wardrobe.
Yeah,
Come on, guys. To me, to you.
yeah.
I
Pivot.
love that advert. You remember that advert, don't you? You remember the Tetley Tea monkeys up and down the stairs with the piano. Oh yeah, absolute classic. No, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. We'll see you all again. Not next week, because it's Easter
Friday.
Go and enjoy your Easter. Buy yourself some chocolate. Overindulge. And then we'll be back the week after to tell you how to lose all of that weight. Until next time, this has been Wow Ergonomics. Do subscribe to it. You can find all previous episodes at wowergonomics.com. And if you've enjoyed this, share it with someone and they'll go, what the hell's ergonomics? Why would I want to listen to that? You can then explain it to them better than I can. Until then, bye for now. And he's